You think Tommy Egan was dangerous in power. What if I told you there was another version of him, wilder, colder, and way more unpredictable, that never made it to your screen? A version so intense, it could have changed the entire show. This wasn't just some small rewrite. This was a whole different beast. What happened to that Tommy? Why was he deleted? And just how crazy was this alternate version? Stick around, you're not ready for what's coming. Tommy Egan isn't just a side character, he is the pulse of power. While Ghost might be the brains, Tommy is the muscle, the fire, and the emotion. He's the one who walks into a room without thinking twice. Loyal to a fault, dangerous when betrayed, and always ready to go to war. That's Tommy. From the very first episode, you could feel it. He wasn't just another criminal trying to survive, he lived in chaos. And sometimes, he was the chaos. He grew up rough, raised in the streets of Queens with Ghost. That bond was unbreakable, or so we thought. While Ghost wanted out of the streets, out of the game, into a cleaner life, Tommy was the opposite. He didn't want to become something new. He wanted to own what he already was. And that's what made him so powerful as a character. He was raw. He was real. And even when he made the worst choices, you kinda understood why. As the series went on, we saw Tommy evolve. He wasn't just some hot-headed hitman. He had layers. Pain, trauma, love. He fell for people, lost them, broke down, and got back up. And even when he clashed with Ghost, even when he made moves that made fans yell at their screens, he stayed true to himself. That's what made him unforgettable. You never knew what he'd do next. One moment he was laughing with Ghost, the next, he was pointing a gun at him. It was like watching a best friend become your worst enemy. But here's the wild part. The version of Tommy we all know and love. That wasn't the original plan. In fact, in early versions of the script, and even in conversations with the Reuters, Tommy's character was almost completely different. They nearly made him colder, more calculated, less emotion, more control. Imagine a Tommy who doesn't care about loyalty, who stabs Ghost in the back way earlier. Imagine a Tommy who never jokes, never cries, never cares. Crazy, right? And yet, that version almost happened. That was the road the creators considered taking. A version where Tommy wasn't the heart of the show, he was just another threat. Just another problem Ghost had to deal with. But before we get into why they scrapped that version, and how dark it actually got, let's take a closer look at what that deleted Tommy Egan was supposed to be, because once you hear the details, you might start looking at the real Tommy in a whole new way. Let me know when you're ready. And I'll continue with section 2. The deleted alternate Tommy, keeping the same style and flow. Asterisk before the Tommy we know ever hit our screens. The creators of Power had a very different vision for him. Behind the scenes, early drafts of the script and internal writers' room discussions painted a version of Tommy that fans today would barely recognize. This wasn't the wild, emotional, ride-or-die Tommy who'd go to war for his people. No, this version was colder, smarter, deadlier, and honestly, terrifying. Let's break it down. The original Tommy wasn't supposed to be Ghost's best friend. He was designed more like a rival, even an early season traitor. He wasn't about loyalty or love, he was about business. All business. No emotion. The writers wanted him to be a man driven by profit and power, not friendship. In fact, in one early concept, Tommy betrays Ghost in season 1. Not out of revenge, not out of heartbreak, just because it made sense. Clean, efficient, no regrets, asterisk, and there's more. In another scrapped version of his backstory, Tommy wasn't from Queens, he was from a much more privileged background. Still criminal but smoother, less reckless. He would have been more like Ghost's mirror image, both men climbing the drug ladder, both cold planners, both trying to outsmart each other. No chaos, no random shootouts in broad daylight. This Tommy would have worn suits, played politics, smiled while stabbing you in the back. Asterisk, even Joseph Sikora, the actor who became Tommy, has talked in interviews about how his version of the character didn't match what was originally on the page. He brought emotion, he brought that wildcard energy, and eventually, the writers realized, that's the real Tommy. So they rewrote him. They leaned into the unpredictable, the brutal honesty, the sudden outbursts. They let Tommy feel, rage, break, and rebuild. But just imagine if they hadn't. Imagine a Tommy who never loved Holly, who never mourned Lakeisha, who never fought to protect Tariq. Picture a Tommy who never cried when Ghost died, because he'd already made peace with the idea of taking him out. That version of Tommy wouldn't have hesitated. He wouldn't have questioned his loyalty. He would have pulled the trigger in season 1, walked away, and never looked back. It's not just a minor change, it would have rewritten the entire DNA of the show. Tommy, as we know him, gave power its heart. But the deleted Tommy, he would have turned it into something else entirely, a colder, darker, more corporate version of the criminal underworld. No friendships, no brotherhood, just business, betrayal, and bullets. Asterisk, and honestly, that version sounds terrifying. Asterisk, but why did they change it? Why did the creators decide that the show needed the real Tommy, the one we all know today? What made them walk away from such a brutal, calculated version of the character? Asterisk, let's get into that. In the next section. Asterisk, now let's talk about why this alternate version of Tommy Egan wasn't just different, it was crazy. Not in a funny or exaggerated way, but in the way it could have completely flipped power upside down. If the writers had gone with the original version, the colder, cleaner, emotionless Tommy, everything would have changed. Asterisk first. Let's look at the core of the show, the bond between Ghost and Tommy. That brotherhood, that love-hate dynamic, is what gave the show its soul. It wasn't just about drug deals and shootouts, it was about trust, betrayal, loyalty, and heartbreak between two men who grew up together. The Tommy we got brought heat, chaos, and pain. But this deleted Tommy, he wouldn't have cared about Ghost's dreams or his struggles. In fact, he would have been the one trying to end him from the start. Asterisk, imagine season 1. Instead of protecting Ghost and backing him up when Lobos came knocking, this version of Tommy might have gone behind his back, cutting deals, stealing power, even working with Angela on the low. No emotions, no loyalty, just moves. Like a chess player in a tailored suit, staying 2 steps ahead. Ghost would have had no one to trust, not even his own so-called brother. That changes the entire game. Asterisk, and what about the audience? The Tommy we know was unpredictable, sure, but also human. You could feel his pain when he lost Holly. You saw his world crumble when he killed his own father. You understood his rage when Ghost kept secrets. Fans felt for Tommy because he wore his emotions out loud. Now picture a version who didn't grieve, didn't break down, didn't explode. Would we even care about him? Or would he just be another villain in a suit? Asterisk, it gets deeper. The chaos Tommy brought, shooting up entire streets, going rogue, smashing bottles mid-conversation, that energy kept the show alive. Ghost was the thinker. Tommy was the storm. Without that storm, power becomes a slower, more strategic drama. Less fire, less danger, less edge. The tension in the show always came from knowing Tommy could snap at any moment. Remove that. You lose the heart-pounding suspense. You lose the fear. Asterisk, even the way other characters moved around him would have changed. Tasha wouldn't have trusted him. Keisha might never have fallen for him. Tariq wouldn't have had that uncle figure who taught him the game. Tommy was messy, but he loved deeply. A colder Tommy, he would have cut people off like loose ends. No emotion, no forgiveness, no looking back. Asterisk, the alternate Tommy might have been smarter, safer, more in control. But power didn't need that. It needed a character who was alive. Who made you yell at the screen. Who made choices that broke your heart and then made worse ones 5 minutes later. That kind of character. You remember forever. Asterisk, and that's why this deleted version is so wild to think about. Because it could have made power unrecognizable. A different tone. A different pace. A different soul. Asterisk, but in the end, the writers made a choice to let Tommy feel. To let him explode. To make him messy, loud, loyal, broken, and real. And honestly, that one decision might be the reason the show became the hit it is today. Asterisk, but what made the writers change their minds? Why did they kill the original concept and double down on the wild version we got? That's where we're headed next. So, why did the creators of Power scrap that original, colder version of Tommy Egan? Why walk away from a more strategic, business-minded villain? The answer is simple, he didn't fit. Not just in the story, but in the soul of the show. Asterisk, when the writers first started developing Power, they imagined something slick, a high-stakes crime drama about power, money, and betrayal. A lot of early characters were written to feel like chess pieces, Tommy included. But once casting started, and Joseph Sikora stepped into the role, something unexpected happened. The character changed, not because the writers rewrote him first, but because Sikora brought something completely different to the table. Asterisk, in early read-throughs and test scenes. Joseph didn't play Tommy as cold, he played him as raw. He made him loud, emotional, explosive. He brought energy the writers hadn't planned for, and that energy lit something up in the room. Suddenly, this wasn't just a side character. Tommy was alive. He wasn't just there to move the plot, he was the plot. The show's creator, Courtney Kemp, has even said in interviews that once they saw what Joseph brought to Tommy, they knew they had to shift direction. The chemistry between him and Omari Hardwick Ghost was too good, too real. The idea of making Tommy a silent, clean-cut betrayer didn't work anymore. These two had something deeper: history, love, tension, a complicated brotherhood that gave the entire show its heart. Asterisk. And there was another problem with the old Tommy. He didn't move the story. Sure, a calm, calculated villain is scary on paper, but on screen, he's slow. You can predict him. You don't feel him. The rewritten Tommy, the one we got, shook things up. Every time he entered a scene, you wondered, what's he going to do? Who's going to survive this conversation? He kept the tension high. Episode after episode, asterisk plus, audiences connected to him. That matters. Even when Tommy made the worst decisions, killing people he loved, lashing out, going rogue, fans stayed with him. Because under all the madness, he had heart. He wasn't just angry, he was hurt. He wasn't just violent, he was loyal. You could see his pain. You could feel his love for Ghost, even when they were trying to kill each other. That kind of character sticks with people. Asterisk, so the writers made the smart call. They deleted the flat version, the cold version. The version that made sense on paper but would have fallen flat on screen. They rewrote Tommy into a fully alive, unpredictable, emotionally charged force of nature. And they never looked back. Asterisk, that decision didn't just save the character. It may have saved the entire show. Asterisk, because without this Tommy, the wild one, the broken one, the one who made us scream and cry, power wouldn't be power. Asterisk, sometimes the best characters aren't created in one sitting. They're discovered, built, tested. Tommy Egan is proof of that. He didn't just arrive on the page fully formed. He evolved from a cold-blooded side villain in early drafts to one of the most unforgettable, emotionally charged anti-heroes in TV history. Asterisk, and here's the crazy part. If just one meeting had gone differently, if one script note had stayed, if Joseph Sikora hadn't pushed that first table read the way he did, we might have ended up with a completely different show. No chaos, no brotherhood. No moments where Tommy made you shout, "What are you doing?" and still somehow root for him. Asterisk, this deleted version of Tommy, the clean-cut, silent killer with no loyalty, no love, and no heart, could have ruined what made power powerful in the first place. Because power was never just about crime. It was about trust. About love turned toxic. About friends becoming enemies. And about one man who never stopped being himself, even when the whole world wanted him to change. Asterisk, the Tommy we got, he didn't play the game. He blew up the board. But now it's your turn to decide. If that cold, ruthless version of Tommy had made it to the screen, would power have been better? Or did the writers make the right call by giving us the Tommy who felt everything, fought for everyone, and lost almost everything? Asterisk, drop your thoughts in the comments. Was the deleted version too wild to work, or would you have watched that show? And if you could write your own version of Tommy, what would he look like? Asterisk, asterisk, and if you want more breakdowns like this, the hidden stories, the scenes that almost happened, and the characters that could have changed everything, hit that like button and subscribe, because in the world of TV, the best characters are often the ones we almost never saw.